I'm Tabby Chavis, Vice Provost for Equity and Inclusion and Chief Diversity Officer at the University of Michigan. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this year's DEI Summit. After several years of being fully remote due to COVID-19, I'm excited to welcome today's attendees who've joined us both in person for the first time in 3 years, as well as those who, And I'm equally welcoming to those who are joining us virtually via our live stream, which has always been the case for our summit. This year's Community Assembly theme, DEI, Nurturing the Heart, Mind, and Soul, explores the role of the arts in supporting our humanity, heart, mental health and wellness, mind, and religious spiritual diversity, soul. These topics are both distinct and interconnected, as each one addresses components of our self-identity and how we connect to the world. The 2022 Community Assembly also marks the end of our DEI 1.0 strategic planning period and evaluation process. It's a part of our 2-year transition to our next phase of our DEI journey that we affectionately call DEI 2.0. As I reflect on the impact of our DEI work over the past 5 years, plus, I'm incredibly proud of the progress we've made. It is because of you, our university community, and so many individuals, groups, units, organizations within it, that we are a better place today than when we began this process over 5 years ago. From the launch of new programs such as Wolverine Pathways, to the development of new spaces like the new Trotter Multicultural Center, to the many things that were addressed and achieved, reformed, revised, and accomplished within our different units and academic spaces and campus spaces, our collective efforts have resulted in impactful and tangible change. Although we have made significant progress, there is still much more to be done. We must continue to work, grow, and learn, and do it together if we are truly to live up to our mantra as leaders invest in all that we do. Today's DEI Summit allows us to look back at our progress and ahead to our future, and what will be required of us in order to be even more successful as we move forward. Now, reading today's land acknowledgement is Josephine Conti, U of M undergraduate student studying neuroscience, and Jaime Fuentes, UM graduate student studying microbiology and immunology.
Thank you for that introduction and for this opportunity. Hello, my name is Josephine Conti, a descendant of the Cherokee Nation.
Hi, I'm Jaime Fuentes, member of the Hopland Band of Pomo Indians, and we are on the executive board of the Native American Student Association.
Acknowledging the land and how this university came to be is essential when we discuss nurturing the heart, mind, and soul during the 2022 DEI Summit. U of M has a very painful history in regards to its interaction with Native communities. Recently, great improvements have been made, but there's still much work that needs to be done to better serve these Native communities. This change can only occur through education, truthfulness, transparency, and reconciliation. We acknowledge the sovereignty of these lands, of these tribal lands, and the painful history of genocide, forced assimilation, and the displacement of Native communities that facilitated the establishment of this very university. We affirm contemporary and ancestral Anishinaabe ties to this land, the profound contributions of Native American peoples to this institution, and the university's commitment to educate the children of Native ancestors.
The University of Michigan is located on the territory of the Anishinaabe people. The Ann Arbor campus currently resides in land ceded through the Treaty of Detroit in 1807. Additionally, in 1817, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations made the largest single land transfer to the University of Michigan, ceded through the Treaty of Fort Meigs, with the agreement that their children would be educated. Acknowledging the land today is an important first step towards healing that needs to be followed by further action. We invite all of you to think about how you can support the Native community that surrounds you. Please look forward to our upcoming Native American Heritage Month events this November. Thank you.
ahead in today's program, I have the distinct honor to introduce the 13th president of the University of Michigan, Dr. Mary Sue Coleman. Earning her undergraduate degree at Grinnell College and at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, President Coleman has served both as a faculty member and administrator, where she was named one of the nation's 10 best college presidents and was honored in 2014 as a recipient of the American Council on Education's Lifetime Achievement Award. As president of U of M, President Coleman has overseen a groundbreaking partnership to digitize the university's 7 million volume library, launched enduring institutional partnerships, revitalized student living and learning experiences through a residential life initiative, and worked tirelessly to promote economic revitalization and innovation within the state of Michigan. Throughout her career, she has promoted the educational value of diverse perspectives in the classroom and within the academic community, and has worked in numerous venues to improve access to higher education for all. At this time, I would like to welcome President Mary Sue Coleman.
Good morning. I'm sorry that I cannot be with you in person, but I'm so pleased to be able to join you remotely to share a few thoughts. First, my thanks to Tabby Shevu for her leadership. I am thrilled that she is our new Chief Diversity Officer and Vice Provost for Equity and Inclusion. It is a critical role at Michigan, and she brings tremendous experience and insight to the position. When the Board of Regents asked me to return as president last January, the first campus event that I participated in was the university's annual Martin Luther King Jr. Symposium. Tomorrow will be my last day as president, a job that I have been honored to serve. And today's DEI Summit is my final campus event. These feel like perfect bookends to me. Our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is absolutely essential to this university's excellence. It's one of the values that I have most appreciated in returning to lead the university. It cannot be said enough. The more diverse we are, the stronger our academic excellence. Our approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion reflects commitments and goals shared centrally and across campus through our schools, colleges, departments, and units. This includes our learning, programming, campus climate, recruitment, admissions, hiring, and retention. I believe this multifaceted approach is the best way to create broad-based, profound cultural change across the entire university. While we've made meaningful progress, more work is still needed to realize the goals articulated in our DEI strategic planning. The public we serve expects the University of Michigan to meet society's needs. To do so, we must draw on the perspectives of faculty, students, and staff from around our state, nation, and the world. Our differences, whether they be philosophical questions that engage us, gender, economic background, faith, race, or personal histories, bring energy to our community. They create an intellectual vitality that makes Michigan internationally renowned. We must always be vigilant about recruiting and retaining the best students and staff and the finest faculty so that they may further enrich this university. And we must pledge to create and sustain an environment that welcomes and supports everyone. I know this work is of the highest priority for Dr. Santa Ono, who becomes president on Friday. He is committed to listening and learning, and I know that you will enjoy working with him. I want to thank the thousands of individuals who make our community so special. I'm particularly grateful to the DEI leads who are steadfast about making Michigan stronger. This is critically important. I recognize it's also hard work. Affecting change often feels that way. This work matters to Michigan, and you are making it happen. Thank you for remaining strong and committed, and please enjoy today's summit.
was live. Thank you, President Coleman, for your commitment and dedication to the university. We are grateful for your thoughtful leadership. At this time, I would like to welcome the Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs at the University of Michigan, Dr. Lori McCauley. Dr. McCauley joined U of M as an assistant professor of dentistry in 1992 and holds 4 degrees from The Ohio State University, which is still great. Bachelor of Science in Education, Doctor of Dental Surgery, Master of Science in Dentistry, and PhD in Veterinary Pathology. As provost, Dr. McCauley oversees the academic and budgetary affairs of the university, works closely with academic leaders and the executive officers to ensure that our programs have financial support that maintains excellence, encourages innovation, and enhances student success, and infuses the values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Prior to her appointment as provost, Dr. McCauley served as the dean of the School of Dentistry and is currently the William K. and Mary Ann Najjar Professor of Periodontics in the School of Dentistry and Professor of Pathology in the Medical School. It is my pleasure to now welcome Dr. Lori McCauley.
Thank you, Tabby. It's been wonderful to have you join Ruthven as a partner and lead in this vital work, and my heartfelt appreciation to President Coleman for her dedicated and inspiring leadership. Good morning, and welcome to all of you who are attending today's summit in person and virtually. It's truly an honor to be part of today's event. As provost at the University of Michigan, I oversee the university's academic and budgetary affairs. Our office is often looking at the larger picture, impact, and future of the university and how we can continue to adapt and be leaders in all we do. As a member of this community since 1992, it's moments like today that remind me of how far we've come and how incredibly proud I am to be part of this great university. Our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, which have long been part of our university, have become an essential part of our very identity. When the DEI strategic plan was announced as a presidential initiative in 2016, I truly believed our best work in this space was yet to come. Now, following the completion of our initial 5-year plan, the results of these efforts have demonstrated our commitment to creating a university that is inclusive, equitable, and diverse. A university for everyone. As we navigated through a worldwide pandemic and national racial awakening, our commitment to DEI has remained unwavering, and in fact, I would argue that we are more resolute today as a result of these experiences. As part of this university-wide commitment to DEI and our need to adapt to these experiences, the Office of the Provost has led numerous anti-racism initiatives, including the Anti-Racism Tenure Track Hiring Program and the Advancing Public Safety at the University of Michigan Task Force. In addition to these efforts, our office has also played a key role in U of M's race and ethnicity curriculum, inclusive teaching liaison program, and our anti-racism professional development experiences for our DEI implementation leads. While we've made significant strides in our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, we acknowledge that with the conclusion of the initial 5-year DEI strategic plan, there's still much work to be done. As a result, I'm proud to be part of the university's continuing commitment and prioritization of DEI and cannot wait to see what our future efforts, including DEI 2.0, will hold. At this time, I would like to move us ahead in our program by introducing Dr. Katrina Wade Golden, our Associate Vice Provost, Deputy Chief Diversity Officer, and Director of Implementation for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategic Plan. Enjoy this moment of learning and nurturing.
Thank you so much, Provost Macaulay, for those very insightful comments. And good morning, U of M. We are so excited for you to be here, and for those of you joining us via live stream, this is indeed a special day for us all. So I am so honored to serve as the Associate Vice Provost and Deputy Chief Diversity Officer in this very important work. And I'm more excited to be here today and to be in community with you and to feel the energy in the room. As was noted, it's been 3 years since we've had the opportunity to be together, so I'm very appreciative for this space. So I want to keep the energy going with the next part of our program. And I have the pleasure of introducing our high-energy student performance by Michigan Munzut. Michigan Munzut is the newest Bollywood fusion team at the University of Michigan. Hailing from the legacies of Michigan Munzil and Izzat, Manzut seeks to combine U of M talent to put creative and expressive performances on stage. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Michigan Munzut.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Tikiti kale kate mati kiti ni madia tungura ba wartana daniyon gate.
Been a fan while she hitting my jack. Another beer with a beater cause I'm feeling like that. Now I just blow the money, got her swimming in cash. I don't even throw the money, sit the prick on that.
Me? No friends in the industry, my brothers been my brothers, man. You ain't killing me a fact. Yeah, you heard about me, you don't know me more than that. Yeah, I know hey, yo. It's the DJ.
Wow, just wow, as my daughter would say. So please give another round of applause for that awesome performance. Thank you. Michigan Manzut. Now, I have the distinct honor of introducing our featured speakers for today's community assembly and discussion. Absolutely. We are in for a treat. And as CDO Chavis mentioned, each of our speakers will speak to one of the aspects of our theme, which will examine the role of art in supporting our humanity, the heart, mind, which will address mental health and well-being, and soul, which will explore religious and spiritual diversity. Speaking to the heart will be Dr. Todd Boyd. Dr. Boyd, AKA Notorious PhD, is the Catherine and Frank Price Endowed Chair for the Study of Race and Popular Culture and Professor of Cinema and Media Studies in the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts. He is a media commentator, author, producer, consultant, and scholar. Dr. Boyd is an intellectual and creative force who transcends boundaries and defies conventional categorization. He is best known as a commentator, appearing in numerous documentaries, including the award-winning The Last Dance on ESPN and Netflix in 2020, which was winner of the Emmy Award for Outstanding Documentary or a Nonfiction Series, as well as 20 Feet from Stardom in 2013, which was winner of the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature and the Grammy Award for Best Music Film. Speaking to the mind will be Dr. Dina Scott. Dr. Scott is a licensed clinical psychologist with Headspace Health. She was called to the field of psychology at the young age of 10. As a clinician, she views mental health, equity, inclusion, and justice as interconnected. Her work in community mental health, schools, private practice, and consulting has allowed her to continuously learn and grow as a social justice-oriented clinical psychologist. Prior to joining Headspace Health as Director of Adolescent Services, a few of the roles she held included Regional Director of Intensive Mental Health Services at Children's Institute and Senior Administrator of Mental Health Services at Merriman School in Los Angeles. She is also a co-founder and an associate facilitator with the Institute for Social Emotional Learning. Lastly, but certainly not least, speaking to the soul is Sarah Hurwitz. Sarah is the author of Here All Along, Finding Meaning, Spirituality, and a Deeper Connection to Life in Judaism after finally choosing to look there, which was a finalist for 2 National Jewish Book Awards and for the Sammy Rohrer Prize for Jewish Literature. Sarah was also a White House speechwriter from 2009 to 2017, starting out as a senior speechwriter for President Barack Obama and then serving as chief speechwriter for First Lady Michelle Obama. Sarah worked with Mrs. Obama to craft widely acclaimed addresses, including her 2008, 2012, and 2016 Democratic National Convention speeches. Sarah also worked on policies, issues affecting young women and girls as a senior advisor to the White House Council on Women and Girls. Please prepare yourself for what I think will be a very impressive collection of insightful, inspiring, and engaging presentations. You are truly in for a treat. Please enjoy presentations of the heart, mind, and soul.
Now, please welcome to the stage Dr. Todd Boyd.
Thank you. I am Dr. Boyd, often known as Notorious PhD, amongst other things. in the brief time that I have, I'm often quite long-winded, and saying my name takes 10 minutes, but I'll accelerate the program a bit. And in this time, try and say a few things that might make you think about how you engage the culture, and the culture particularly that surrounds us. When you think about culture, I'm often reminded of a very popular phrase that's been popular in hip-hop culture for quite some time, and that is very simply, for the culture, right? I do it for the culture, right? Interesting to think about. As someone who works in the culture, I often encounter people who think about culture, and when I talk about culture, I'm talking about movies and music and art, popular culture, sports, broad range of things. I often encounter people who think of culture as only something that they do in their leisure time, something for entertainment, and culture can most certainly be leisurely activity and quite entertaining. But I often think about culture in ways similar to how we think about the food that we consume, right? We consume food, and we also consume culture, right? You eat, but you also, when engaging culture, think. We have a lot of conversation in our society about healthy eating, perhaps not as many conversations in our society about the culture we consume, but it works in ways quite similar. In other words, if you have a diet that's composed of nothing but fast food, there might be some health complications at some point to contend with. But imagine if you thought about what you put in your mind the same way, if you thought about how in the culture you consume mentally, what impact it has on your overall being. With that, I want to tell you a quick story, because I think of the many ways we can look at culture as perhaps in one sense, the film critic Roger Ebert used to talk about how movies created opportunities for empathy, right? People getting the opportunity to watch movies about other people, other ways of life, things outside their own orbit. If we think about it in this way, how culture can be like a seed planted in you that alone maybe doesn't accomplish the objective, but is certainly a start. So I thought I'd tell you a personal story, considering I'm actually from a place not very far from here. Perhaps you've heard of it. It's called Detroit. Thank you. When I was in The Last Dance, I was very happy to get the opportunity to insert a Detroit perspective in all this praise going towards Chicago's Michael Jordan. So the opportunity to rep my city is something I appreciate very much. I did not go to Michigan, however. Michigan actually turned me down when I applied for grad school, but here I am now, so it's all good. I do rep University of Southern California, and in a year or two, we will all be in the Big Ten, as crazy as that seems, right? Tell you a story about Detroit in the 1970s when I was a kid growing up, a long time ago. But at this time, in the early 70s, downtown Detroit, there were a lot of movie theaters, all in the same area. The Adams, the Grand Circus Park, State, the Fox, the Plaza. I particularly liked the Plaza because next door to the Plaza was this popcorn spot. And I learned from an early age, dealing with my family, not to buy the popcorn in the theater, buy the popcorn from the popcorn spot and take it in. It was better than what they sold in the theater, and it was also cheaper, right? I had these really fond memories of going to see movies with my father, and this is the early 70s, and there are two things going on in terms of movies. One, this is the era known as New Hollywood. This is a moment when the studio system is kind of clueless. That could be any moment. But in that moment in particular, the studio system was giving directors the opportunity to kind of express themselves in ways that has not necessarily been the case since then. So the era of new Hollywood films like The Godfather and The Exorcist, French Connection, this is going on, Last Tango in Paris. It's also the era of blaxploitation movies, right? Movies like Shaft and Superfly and The Mac and Spook Who Sat by the Door, Coffee, Foxy Brown, etc. And when you would go see these movies, the people in the theaters looked very much like the people you would see on screen. Something, to me as a kid, processing all this, sometimes the line between what was on screen and what was real was not that distinct. At one point, though, I remember encountering the films of a gentleman by the name of Bruce Lee, right? And the thing that stood out about Bruce Lee was in the midst of all these blaxploitation movies, there were also martial arts movies playing at the same theaters, and these martial arts films were, of course, films featuring a variety of Asian actors and Asian narratives. And interesting, if you think about a filmmaker like Quentin Tarantino, he has made an entire career appropriating blaxploitation movies and martial arts movies, right? But long before Quentin Tarantino came along, I discovered Bruce Lee watching a movie called Return of the Dragon. And at the end of Return of the Dragon, Bruce Lee has this very visible, prominent battle with a gentleman by the name of Chuck Norris. And the location of their fight is the Colosseum in Rome. I'm a kid. I've heard about the Colosseum, I guess, maybe. But for the first time, I register this landmark location in this place far from any location I had ever been to. And I kind of, put it on the hard drive, not knowing what I'd do with it until many years later. But I saw Bruce Lee, and what was astounding to me in watching these movies, and the theaters would be packed, and if you're going to movies in Detroit in the early 70s, the audience might be more interesting than what's on screen, right? It's possible. A lot of back and forth, a lot of conversation. This was all part of it. These audiences loved Bruce Lee. These were overwhelmingly black audiences. Bruce Lee, of course, is an Asian man. And I looked around, and this is a time when the Vietnam War was still going on. So there are a lot of black men going to Vietnam, coming back home, bringing elements of, say, Asian culture back with them. There are karate studios all over the city. As a matter of fact, a lot of people even wore the type of shoes Bruce Lee wore in his movies, so much so that we called the shoes Bruce Lee's, right? There's a reason I'm telling you the story about Bruce Lee, because as a young black kid, I saw someone who was not black, who was not white, and from my perspective at that time, the world was basically operating on that axis, a black-white binary, some people now refer to it. But I got this opportunity to see a black audience embrace an Asian martial arts star. Many years later, when I decided that I wanted to devote myself to the writing and research, lecturing and such, living the life for the culture, long after watching those movies in downtown Detroit, I learned about Bruce Lee's struggle in Hollywood. I learned about the fact that here was a gentleman who had a great idea for a television series. He had trained many of the actors, Steve McQueen, Lee Marvin, and others working in Hollywood, even Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. They would later do a very famous pop cultural film known as Game of Death. Bruce Lee had this idea for a TV show set in the Old West. It was about an individual walking through the Old West and being reminded of the lessons he learned growing up. And inevitably, he would encounter someone and they would take it to a place they shouldn't have taken it to. And Bruce Lee, in this conception, would use his skills in martial arts to defeat them. But Hollywood decided that they could not allow an Asian man to star in a network television show. They felt like the audience wasn't ready, so they cast a guy named David Carradine, white guy, and they had David Carradine play an Asian man. Nobody remembers David Carradine. Everybody remembers Bruce Lee. So what did Bruce Lee do? He didn't cry, he didn't complain, he didn't give up. He went to Hong Kong, started making movies in Hong Kong, and the next thing you know, he's not an American star, he's a global star, right? His struggle was a struggle that was very similar to the people around me had themselves experienced. Many, many years later, I got the opportunity to go to Rome. I'm in Rome. Where's the first place I want to go? Perhaps a place a lot of people who go to Rome want to go. I wanted to go to the Colosseum, not because of Roman history, not because of biblical history, but because I saw it in a Bruce Lee movie. At an earlier, I should say at a later point in my life, there was a group, hip-hop group known as the Wu-Tang Clan, right? Wu-Tang Clan merged black street culture with Asian martial arts culture, right? Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with, right? My point to you is this. These are all cultural examples. I saw a Bernardo Bertolucci film called The Last Emperor. Similar experience. I went to Beijing and I'm standing in the Forbidden City and I'm remembering the inspiration I received from watching movies. The movie's a seed, it's a start. It's not the entirety of the journey, it's a start. And of course, if you treat seeds properly, they can grow into something very beneficial. I think about culture that way. It's like a seed. It offers us the opportunity to get out of our own environment and momentarily, the music we listen to, the movies we watch, etc., perhaps imagine how someone else might experience life. That is, of course, relevant if the culture one is watching is properly presented, if it's represented properly, if it's not a bunch of stereotypes, but instead something uplifting and meaningful and substantive and profound. Culture is a start. It gives all of us the opportunity to connect across boundaries if we fully take advantage of it. And so with that, I would say, as I was asked, when we talk about culture, when you think about for the culture, its meaning for us, culture is an opportunity for us to engage and has always been an opportunity for us to engage diversity, equity, inclusion. It's not the be-all, end-all. It's one part of a larger process, but it is a start. We all enjoy our own culture. We should continue to enjoy it. We should also recognize the opportunity it provides for us to make connections across these lines. Thank you very much.
Now, please welcome to the stage Dr. Dina Scott.
Hello, hello. I am so grateful to be here with you all today. I'm particularly grateful because I am able to talk about the mind and its connection to diversity, equity, inclusion. For me, there's nothing that is more important than this conversation. And also, you will see behind me pictures of my mom and dad, John and the late Paulette, and myself with my mom as well. And when I think about the mind, when I think about nurturing the mind, it's also so important for me to talk a bit about my journey and some of what has connected me to the field of mental health. You also will see what has been a statement, what has been a question, what has been a proclamation, what has been an affirmation for me throughout the years, which is mental health care and healing is for everyone. That has been an interesting thing to dissect in so many ways. It can seem simple and also very complex because at times, mental health care hasn't always felt like it was for me or for my family or for everyone. And it also needs to be for me, for my family, for everyone. So when I think about the journey of myself, when I think about these pictures of my mom and dad, it makes me think a lot about the why. Why mental health? Why healing? Why diversity, equity, inclusion? I think about my mom, who was often known as Superwoman. For me, when I was young, I didn't realize how much of a weight that carried on her. Being a Black woman who was trying to do it all for everyone, show up for everyone, be for everyone, and oftentimes not really being able to do those things for self. She was a giver. She gave so much until she gave her last breath. And a lot of what her journey taught me was, yes, it is amazing to be able to show up for folks. And it's also so imperative for us to be able to show up for ourselves. I also think about my dad. My dad is someone who went to Vietnam, someone who silently and loudly was struggling with PTSD from his Vietnam experience, and someone who never spoke of mental health. For my mom, for my dad, mental health was not a conversation that was in the home. That was not a conversation that was with friends, with anyone. It was something that they kind of navigated in ways that were often silent. My dad, now in his 70s, has been able to acknowledge his PTSD, has been able to talk to folks in groups about the Vietnam War, and there's more permission to have the conversation, which didn't feel like there was permission before, which didn't feel like mental health care was for him at one point in time. And then I think about myself. So you might have heard that at 10, I was called to the field of psychology, which might sound strange. And in terms of thinking a bit about my journey, some of the reason that I was called to the field was because of my own childhood trauma experiences. And at 10, being able to have a conversation with my mom about what was going on, and her seeing in me all of the layers of pain, all of the layers of fear, all of the layers of I need help, my mind is not okay. So at that point, we were referred to a mental health professional. And the experience with the mental health professional, instead of feeling like it was healing, instead of feeling like I was seen, like my mom and I were heard, it actually felt like we were being stigmatized. There were stereotypes that were happening. There was a lot of disconnect. I didn't really see anyone around that looked like me. And in some ways, it felt like there was some harm done. And I knew at that point, at 10 years old, I was like, this is something that's not okay for any other brown girl to experience. So I want to figure out how I'm getting into this mental health field. And it was interesting because, again, there was no conversations in my family about mental health, even after we went to this. Everything was kind of silent around that. But I knew that there was a purpose. I knew that there was something that needed to be done that really connected and interconnected DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as mental health and wellness. So we go forward. I was able to move along in the field. And it was interesting because I started hearing stories from folks to where there was a lot of people that didn't necessarily feel like mental health was for them, that didn't necessarily feel like they had permission to really engage in healing. And that was something that I felt like also needed to be some type of call to action for the mental health field. How do we start showing up for each other? How do we start making sure that the priority is for all of us? That it doesn't feel like mental health is only for this group or only for that group, but it's really something that's for all. So when thinking about just accessibility, when thinking about mental health, it's also something that is really big on my mind, my heart, and my spirit, the fact that accessibility is not necessarily something that is really accessible for all. So you think about the fact that when we look at global numbers, 1 in 8 folks are dealing with mental health challenges. And when you think about that, there's also still continuous layers of stigma, there's still some fear, there's still some concern around cost, there's still some concern about how can I access? Will I be seen? Will I be heard? Will I be understood? When we think about even in the United States, 50% there's 50 counties that actually don't have mental health providers that are available for folks. That's, a good number of counties. When you think about other populations specific to African Americans, specific to other BIPOC communities, specific to LGBTQ populations, there are a number of folks that don't necessarily see representation in the field. So that definitely, to me, is another need and call to action. When I think about mental health care and just the fact that, sometimes we have the conversation, sometimes we do not have the conversation, it's also important for us to think about health, right, in our health care. A lot of times we talk about physical health. There's a normalization. We can talk about something that might be going wrong with our bodies. When it comes to our mind, there oftentimes is this disconnect to where it feels like if I say that something's wrong, something's going on with my mind, there's something that I'm navigating, it seems to in some ways feel like there's this weakness, and there's not. There's strength in being able to have these conversations. But again, we need to be able to normalize them. Looking more at numbers, again, in the United States alone, there's 1 in 5 adults who are navigating a diagnosable mental health condition. Also, when thinking about depression and anxiety, there is $1 trillion that is lost in productivity when thinking about this form of mental health. And when thinking about early intervention, it's so essential. And so when I think about just the University of Michigan, I think about college-age students, how important it is to start young, start with children, continue the conversation with teenagers, continue the conversations when we're in college. So when we're adults, the conversation feels normalized. It feels like something that, again, is for us, that is by us, as opposed to it feeling like it's othered. I also, in terms of part of my journey, want to talk a little bit about where I am now. So now, currently, I am with Headspace. And what's interesting about Headspace and being with Headspace is I have always been someone who has been like, oh my gosh, technology, I'm not the most tech savvy, I'm not somebody who necessarily always feels the most comfortable, and technology is such an important part now of the journey in the mental health field. When I think about working with young folks, there's so many things that have come up that I've learned in terms of, again, what do we do for those that are digital age, that are digital citizens, that really want us to, again, show up in ways that are more outside of the box. It is not the way that we access everybody, thinking that they're going to come to a clinic, that they're going to see someone in person. So how do we mix it up? How do we, again, make sure that we're thinking about diversity in our way of being, our way of doing? So Headspace is also a space that is trying to provide the ability for folks to access mental health care in different ways. So Headspace is an app, but we also do coaching, we also do mental health therapy and psychiatry. And it's important to me to have the conversation about doing things in different ways and being more creative, because again, when you think about diversity, you can't do anything one way. You can't show up one way and feel like you're gonna serve everyone. So I welcome folks to think about different ways that you can also engage in mental health. When you think about what mental health care means for you, how you understand mental health care in your individual self, as well as thinking about yourself and the complexity of your families, as well as thinking about yourself in relation to different cultures, what does mental health mean for you? Are there some things that we need to change? Are there some things that we need to tweak when it comes to the conversation? Are there some things that we need to make sure that we understand a little bit better so we can give ourselves that permission? Also, one thing that is happening here specifically at the University of Michigan is there is going to be an introduction of a Headspace student plan. So this is going to be coming soon, and one of the things that was talked about, again, and think about that accessibility is when thinking about students, how do we also think about cost? So there's going to be an 85% discount for folks, which is amazing, but it also is not something that is the answer, right? So when you think about, again, what is next, it's important to think about all of the different ways that we can show up and show out for each other. I also want to shout out my colleague, Dr. Wisdom Powell, who will be out in November, on November 1st, to talk a bit more about just mental health and students and what that intersect means. One of the things that, again, when thinking about us, when thinking about permission, is being able to, again, have some of those checks and balances with ourselves. You know, when it comes to having that conversation about mental health, some of us never start the conversation. Some of us feel challenged with the conversation. Some of us feel like the conversation is stunted by something. And to be quite honest, in terms of just even the field, I enter the field even because of some potential harm, right? And so the field does have imperfections. And that still does not mean that mental health is not for, and mental health care and healing should not be for all of us. So one of the things that I think is so important for us to think about, just be guided with when we think about that mind and nurturing the mind, is different ways that we can make sure that mental health is for you, that mental health is for me, that mental health and mental health care and healing is for all of us. And I also just really love to highlight folks that have talked about just mental health care or just caring for ourselves. And I wanted to highlight Audre Lorde. And she says, caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. And I want us to really sit with that. I want us to really think about that, right? Because again, sometimes it might feel like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm focusing in on myself, I'm taking away from something else. You know, I think again about my mom, right? Can I give myself that permission? And the thing is, we must give ourselves that permission. When we think about ourselves, when we think about what's next, when we think about all of the things that are connected to us as being in mind, heart, and spirit, it is necessary for us to make that space, to take that time to focus in on self and what we need to do to support our minds, to support our hearts, to support our spirits and our soul, as those are so interconnected. And again, it's not self-indulgence, okay? Remind ourselves of that. This is about self-preservation. This is about us moving forward. This is about us being able to be whole. And so I want to leave us with that. I want to thank you all, and I want to encourage us as a call to action to allow ourselves to focus in on selves, on us, because again, that is about our overall well-being. Thank you all so much.
Now, please welcome to the stage Sarah Hurwitz.
So it is such a pleasure to be here today with these phenomenal speakers, and I want to share some thoughts for the soul portion of this program about how we can honor and celebrate religious and spiritual diversity. And I want to start with my own story, which for the first 36 years of my life was very much about not honoring and celebrating religion and spirituality. I was raised by parents who were not deeply engaged with their own Judaism, but they wanted to give me some sense of Jewish identity. So they sent me to Hebrew school, which I did not enjoy, and they dragged me to a synagogue to observe the major holidays, which I found boring. And once I had my bat mitzvah, I decided I had had enough. I felt like I was too smart for religion, and I didn't buy the idea that some all-powerful God was up there controlling everything. So while I would always be Jewish in some way that I couldn't quite articulate, I had no intention of engaging deeply with Judaism. Well, fast forward 25 years later, and at the age of 36, during my 6th year in the White House, I broke up with a guy I was dating. I was lonely and anxious. And when I heard about an introduction to Judaism class at the local Jewish Community Center, I decided to sign up. I wasn't on some deep spiritual journey or seeking to fill a deep hole in my life. I was more looking to fill a Wednesday night. But what I discovered in that class absolutely blew my mind. 4,000 years of crowdsourced wisdom from millions of my ancestors about what it means to be human. As I studied Jewish spirituality, I discovered that Judaism actually has a wonderful humility about God, a refusal to shrink something infinite and indefinable into the categories that our tiny human brains can comprehend. So there is no Jewish dogma or definition of God that one must accept or reject, but rather countless different ideas and experiences. There's the idea that God is the process by which we each become our highest, truest self. The idea that God is everything. You're all God, I'm God. There is no barrier or separation between us. We're all one. There's the idea that God is what happens between two people in deep relationship, each fully seeing and being fully vulnerable with the other. What arises between them is God. As I studied Jewish ethics, I realized just how low the bar of modern secular ethics really is. It's basically, do whatever you want, as long as you don't hurt other people too much, as long as you don't assault them or steal their property or violate their rights. And bookstores have entire self-help aisles on how to be happier and calmer, more authentic and productive, not how to be kinder or more generous or humble or honest. There's plenty on social media about self-exploration, self-affirmation, self-expression, a little less so on self-discipline, self-sacrifice, self-transcendence. All of that I discovered in Judaism. And the more deeply I connected to Jewish tradition, the more fully human I felt. Like I was finally swimming in the deeper waters of my life. And in a way that I can't fully articulate and did nothing to deserve, my existence truly matters. I know that so many people of so many diverse religious and spiritual backgrounds have experiences similar to mine. And today, I'd like to offer a few thoughts on how we can honor and celebrate this kind of diversity. I think we can start by checking our own biases about the very category of religion and spirituality. See, people sometimes claim that religion is responsible for all the world's evils, but they seem to forget that entirely secular ideologies like Stalinism, for example, have resulted in unconscionable cruelty and millions of deaths. Or they look at the most hateful, bigoted, and frankly stupid religious leaders, those who loudly claim that God hates this or that group of people, or favors this or that political candidate, and they judge all religious people as small-minded. But let's be very clear. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was not small-minded, nor was Mahatma Gandhi or Elie Wiesel, nor is Malala Yousafzai. Each of them deeply committed to their spiritual and religious traditions. And it's important to remember that so much of the work of spirituality and religion is not loud, it's quiet, unfolding in soup kitchens and foster homes, and through daily acts of courage and activism and love. We also need to check our biases not just towards religion itself, but toward particular religious and spiritual traditions. Too often, we lump all religions together, assuming they're all pretty much the same. They are not. Or we assume that everyone within a particular religious or spiritual tradition has the same practices and beliefs. They don't. Each religious and spiritual tradition is itself breathtakingly diverse. People can mean countless different things when they say that they're atheist or agnostic, Hindu, Wiccan, Muslim, Baha'i. Orthodox Jews are not the same as Reformed Jews, nor are Catholics the same as Baptists. And even within these more specific categories, you'll find a tremendous diversity of opinion. Another mistake that we make is to view others' traditions and practices through the lens of our own beliefs. And as a result, we misunderstand and disrespect them. For example, how many of you have heard the old slander about how the Old Testament is violent and vengeful, and Judaism is nitpicky and legalistic, all about law and not love? Well, the folks who spread those hateful lies don't seem to realize that what they call the Old Testament, or as many Jews prefer to call it, the Hebrew Bible or Tanakh, that wasn't the end of Jewish sacred texts. It was the beginning. We've actually spent 2,500 years interpreting that text. For example, 2,000 years ago, ancient rabbis declared that the phrase an eye for an eye really means that if you put out someone's eye, you have to compensate them monetarily for their loss. And you may notice that Jews don't stone people for not observing Shabbat, and in the kind of Judaism that over 90% of American Jews practice, women and LGBTQ people serve as rabbis, and LGBTQ marriages are not just allowed, but proudly celebrated. As for Judaism being about law, not love, well, I think those who say that clearly haven't actually studied Jewish law, which is filled with countless examples like this one. Jewish law tells us that if we've loaned money to someone in need, and we know they can't afford to pay us back, and we happen to see them walking down the street, we should try not to run into them, because doing so might embarrass them or stress them out. That law isn't nitpicky or legalistic. Like so many Jewish laws, it is guiding us to cultivate an exquisite sensitivity to the feelings and dignity of others. Our laws are how we embody and express this deep, on-the-ground kind of love. We believe that love comes to life in the specific daily details of how we treat our fellow human beings. Also, it's actually not even accurate to call Judaism only a religion. There are plenty of Jews who know nothing about Jewish religion and don't practice it, but they're still Jewish. Judaism also isn't an ethnicity or a race. There are Jews of all races and all ethnicities. Probably the closest word in English to describe what Jews are is a peoplehood, one you're born into or choose to join through conversion. So to view Judaism through a Christian lens or a secular lens or the lens of American categories is to misunderstand it. And this is true of any religious and spiritual tradition. When you look at it through your own lens, imposing your own categories and biases, you're likely going to wind up distorting it and disrespecting it. So today, I want to invite you to assume a posture of curiosity and wonder when people tell you about their spiritual and religious backgrounds and beliefs. Even better, I invite you to do the work and actually take the time to learn about these traditions and communities so that you can pay them the respect of encountering them on their terms, through their lenses, rather than just your own. I also invite you to a posture of support and allyship, because we desperately need it right now. In recent years, we have seen heartbreaking and infuriating attacks on Sikh Americans, Muslim Americans, Jewish Americans, and others, including, just recently, right here in Ann Arbor, where horrifying anti-Semitic flyers were distributed, just as Jews were preparing to celebrate the high holy days of Rosh Hashanah. Sadly, this is just one example of the rising anti-Semitism we're seeing across America and worldwide. And those who've been affected need to feel the support and love of their classmates and colleagues. It can be as simple as sending a text or calling to say, "Hey, I heard what happened. It's awful and I am heartbroken and I'm here for you." Finally, if you're someone who considers yourself a spiritual or religious person, I invite you, actually I urge you, to take pride in that. Don't let the biases or categories of others define you. Don't let anyone turn you into some kind of metaphor for their hateful agenda or vile conspiracy theory. And don't let them distract you from what religious and spiritual traditions at their very best can offer us. How they can help us see and honor the infinite worth of every human being. How they can give us courage and hope in times of hardship. How they can remind us that it's not all about us, that we have obligations to others as well. And how they can teach us to love in that hard, on the ground, in the messy details kind of way that we so desperately need right now. Whether you consider yourself religious or spiritual or not, I think we could all use a lot more of all of this in our lives and in our world today. Thank you.
Wow, what an amazing set of presentations. Very insightful and just wonderful. So we're now going to transition into a really meaningful part of the program, the interactive panel discussion. So before we do that, please give another round of applause to all of our speakers. So I'd first like to introduce the moderator for our panel. And as is noted on your program, we had originally planned for Melissa Borje to moderate, but she was unable to do that. And so standing in for Melissa, we have Dr. Debbie Willis. Welcome, Debbie. Debbie works in our provost office and is assistant vice provost. Thank you so much for stepping in, Debbie. Joining the panel is undergraduate student Diego Andrade Cabrera. Diego is a senior majoring in sport management and minoring in business real estate development. He is from Chicago, Illinois, and is the co-president and founder of the Michigan Sport Business Inclusion Community, where he advocates for a more equitable and diverse sports industry. Diego is also president of Lambda Theta Phi Latin Fraternity Incorporated, Alpha Omicron chapter. Please welcome to the stage, Diego. And lastly, I'd like to welcome back all of our speakers, Dr. Ty Boyd, Dr. Dina Scott, and Sarah Hurwitz.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you all for your presentations. Those were great. And Diego, I'm so happy to have a student voice on our panel.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to see you. So we're going to have a couple of questions, and each of you can respond to the questions, and I'll just pick one of you to start. So our first question is, the audience has had the opportunity to hear each of our speakers, you all, discuss a specific aspect of our theme, DEI, nurturing the mind, heart, and soul. We would love for you all to share how you feel mental health, spiritual or religious diversity, and the arts intersect for you personally. In other words, how have these areas shaped and helped define who you are and the work that you do in diversity, equity, and inclusion? We'll start with Dr. Scott.
All right, I am happy to get us started. I feel like when thinking about just mental health, when thinking about diversity, equity, inclusion, for me, those things are also interconnected. I feel like there isn't a way to necessarily separate them out. And as I shared a bit in my story, I feel like that was something that really brought me into the field. So whether it was looking at what was going on around me and my family, with my mom, with my dad, or my own experience with trauma and kind of feeling unseen, unheard, and feeling like there was a call to action for the mental health field, I feel like it's always just been there. And the privilege of being in the field, I think, has taught me that it needs to continue to be the center. So you can't really have good mental health care without thinking about deeply diversity, equity, inclusion, also belonging, and what that means for folks. Because again, we haven't always done our part in making sure folks feel seen, feel heard, or cared for. And as I called out too, there has at times even been harm that has been done, within the field. And so we need to repair some of those wounds. So for me, again, it's always connected. I think the mind, heart, and spirit needs to be nurtured, and you can only do that when thinking about diverse, equitable, inclusive lens.
Thank you. Did anyone want to add?
I mean, I really agree with you, and I think in my own life, I now I volunteer part-time as a hospital chaplain, and I very much see in my patients come from incredibly diverse backgrounds, religiously, racially, ethnically, languages they speak. I mean, the diversity is just on every front it's magnificent. And I think a lot about how spiritual health and mental health intersect, because there's an idea from Celtic theology it's an idea about thin spaces, where there's spaces where the borders between life and death, heaven and earth kind of thin out. And I think hospitals are very much these thin spaces where people are very vulnerable, and you really want to be just so careful to make sure you're approaching them with a position of incredible respect, of compassion, of listening, really radical, deep listening. And I think it's very much ties to my Jewish spirituality, which, in Judaism, Jewish law is constantly pushing us into thin spaces. There's so much thinking around visiting the sick, being with those who are in mourning, caring for people who are grieving, and caring for the dead as well. So we're constantly being pushed into these thin spaces to be in moments of vulnerability, and I've seen the power of people's spiritual lives and their mental health. I see how people who are very sick, who are dying, when they have a rich spiritual tradition, I see how it gives them hope and comfort and a sense of just deep strength. So I have tremendous respect for that intersection.
Yeah, I am someone who figured out at some point in my life that I could make a living talking about and writing about things that I would do for free. And I call that a win. So, you know, watching a football game or a basketball game, that's work for me. I'm serious. That work. It's also enjoyable, you know, watching movies, listening to music. I mean, that's my life. It's been my life for a very long time. And at some point I realized I could express myself through those things that were very meaningful to me at a personal level, and make a living doing it. So, you know, there are these two design icons, Charles and Ray Eames. And Charles and Ray Eames often talked about this idea of a seamless life, this life that, you know, didn't necessarily split into work and, you know, sort of fun, or however you want to describe it, work and pleasure, but this sort of seamless life where the work you did was also pleasurable, right? But it's also work, and there are times when it's maybe more work than pleasure, and there's times maybe when it's more pleasure than work. But one of the things I do just as a habit is research, but you know, there are movies, documentaries, albums I listen to over and over and over again all the time. And just recently I was reading an article which said that there's something mentally valuable about this, meaning, let's say you're watching a movie that you've seen, you know, quite a bit. You already know how it ends. You know the outcome. There are no surprises. You're not gonna encounter something that you don't know about because you're so familiar with it. And oftentimes I realize I do this and I'm on my phone, so, you know, the movie or whatever is in the background and I'm not fully paying attention, but there are moments when I'll stop and I'll laugh or I'll, you know, quote the line or whatever. I didn't even realize what I was doing so much as I thought I was just doing research, but there was something about that in this article I'm reading that modulates your mood, right? And you need that. You know, you need modulation. And so I guess what I would say is my whole life, my whole career has been about moving through these spaces that I hope are seamless, because I enjoy what I do and I also enjoy all these things, you know, at a different level, and being able to combine that and, as I say, make a living, to me, that's a win.
Thank you. So art is a catalyst for conversation. How can the arts be leveraged to spur meaningful dialogue? And we'll begin with you, Dr. Boyd.
Well, I mean, you know, social media is a sort of component that has been added to the cultural conversation in relatively recent times. And, you know, social media can be really problematic, but, you know, I mean, I realize now, like, it's a news source as well. How can the arts be a catalyst? All I have to say right now are two words: Kanye West. You know, I mean, that name, he's not Kanye West, I guess he's Ye, but, you know. Just by mentioning Kanye, all sorts of conversations, you know, are sparked. Like, the name is a spark, and not necessarily a spark in a good way, not necessarily a spark in a positive way, in a very troubling way, but when you talk about Kanye, you're having conversations about very important social issues. You know, anti-Semitism most recently, but, you know, as my mother would say, just being a damn fool in another sense, right? I mean, but what are you talking about? Like, you're talking about mental health, you're talking about anti-Semitism, you're talking about right-wing politics. This guy's he's a producer and a rapper and then a designer. We're not talking about some, philosophical giant, but because of his visibility, in no way, shape, or form are we talking about a philosophical giant. I guess my point is just that name, and there are other names I could mention. That one's prominent right now, but it sparks conversations about things far beyond his own narcissism and egomania. And so when you think about culture at its best, you can have conversations about football that are much bigger than the game of football. You can have conversations about art, Jean-Michel Basquiat, a lot of work I'm doing in recent times around the artist Jean-Michel Basquiat. I mean, Basquiat's doing paintings back in the 80s titled Irony of a Negro Policeman, right? Well, a few years later, NWA emerges in hip hop, and Ice Cube says the same thing in his lyrics that Basquiat's referring to in his painting. This is a painting, but it sparks conversation about police brutality. So the arts, I think, are perfectly suited to generate, all sorts of conversation. And they need not all be controversial. They can be about pleasure. They can be about enjoyment. The conflict I have, there was a time when Kanye was making some cool music. So what do I do now? Do I skip over Kanye? Like, can I not listen to Kanye? Like, is that a different Kanye? It's hard for me to tolerate the MAGA Kanye. But if you know crack music, that song hit. Jesus Walks, that shit sounds good, right? I'm just being real. Like, I can't listen. I have a closet full of clothes, particularly sneakers. It's ridiculous. Quite a few of the shoes I have are Yeezys. Do I not wear them? Every time I get ready to put them on, I'm like, do I wear these shoes? Like, am I repping Kanye when I wear these shoes, or does it look good with the outfit I have on? That's what culture does. It provokes. And that provocation can be good, it can be negative, it can be a number of things.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying the important thing is it starts a conversation.
Yes.
And that we should have those conversations. Did anyone want to add to that?
Yeah, I can add first and foremost. I think if you're ever looking to get rid of your Yeezys,
what size you wear?
What size?
We can talk backstage about that for sure. But I think he brought up a good point when he talked about platform, right? I think that's what it gives you culture, gives you a platform too. Kanye has a platform. And I think a lot of what I've done is really use the platform that sports has as a vehicle for change. Is kind of a lot of what I focused on through my organization and sort of just as I progressed through my career. And I think definitely starting with an internship I did where essentially our tagline was using sports to talk about race and how that thing can kind of come into part. You look at it right now, the NBA is super progressive and very encouraging about their players using their platform. You'll have Kevin Love talking about mental health and the importance of that. You got LeBron always being an advocate for social change, leading different initiatives. So I think just overall, from my perspective and from my career perspective in sports, I really see as really just sort of being a driving force within that culture, within creating change.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, and I love just hearing you both speak because I also think about the journey that mental health has taken and how when thinking about the conversation in the arts and different spaces, no matter if it's for good or maybe, a challenge, I think it is important that the conversation is happening. And when you think about just healing, there are folks who are really called to artistic spaces to support their healing. So whether that is around dance, whether that is around music, whether that is around writing, that's so important for that also to be able to live with us when we think about our mental health, our wellness, our mind, heart, and spirit as well.
Just to add to that, I think it's Kafka who said that a book is an axe for the frozen sea within us. And I think that that's true of so many different art forms. And I see it in my work in the hospital, when I lead a spirituality group on our behavioral health unit, with people who are struggling with pretty serious mental illness, if I play a song or we read a poem, it cuts through so much. It gets to a deeper place, so I think it does. It starts these amazing conversations, and it helps us go deeper.
Thank you. So religious and spiritual diversity are aspects of our core values that we carry into the classroom and workplace. What would you consider fundamental in supporting the religious and spiritual diversity of our campus community and beyond? Sarah?
Yeah. I mean, I think, in addition to just the various things that I mentioned in our speech, I think it's just so important for us to be able to tell our religious and spiritual stories, and for us to be able to articulate our religious and spiritual values. I think about how much my own Jewish values have influenced my career. When I think probably the most core beating heart Jewish idea is the idea that we're all created in the image of God. And whether or not you believe in any kind of God, doesn't matter. You can be a total atheist and appreciate the power of this idea, which essentially, as Jewish tradition understands it, is saying that every human being is infinitely worthy, can't put a price on a human life, saying that we're all equal, no one is more or less valuable than anyone else, and it's saying that each of us is unique. There is no one else like us on this planet. And the reality is that not a single one of us in here actually believes this. We don't. I mean, think about how many times have each of us walked by someone on the street who said, hey, can you help me? Can you spare $1? And look, maybe we've given them $1. Maybe we've said, oh, I'm sorry, not today. Maybe we've just ignored them. I guarantee you, if that person had been a celebrity, you would not have just kind of handed them $1 and walked away or said, sorry, not today. You would have stopped. Like, oh my gosh, it's you. Can I have a selfie? Can I talk? I love your work. We fundamentally don't think people, we value people based on their wealth, their fame, their beauty, their status, so many other things than just their innate human dignity. And when I think about that value, that's a value, it's important for me to articulate that value because it has just come into play throughout my career. Every speech I wrote for Michelle Obama was about that value. When she was writing about the importance of girls around the world getting to go to school, what she was saying is every single one of these girls is infinitely valuable. Each of these girls is equal to every other child on this planet, including my daughters, and each of these girls is unique. They have this unique world of potential and possibility to offer us. And so for me, articulating that, I think it helps me come into conversation with others and educate them. So I think for all of us to be able to articulate our spiritual and religious values, and in my opinion, everyone's a spiritual being. You don't have to have a religion or some kind of organized thing. I think spirituality touches on what takes you out of yourself, what brings you into something higher, what kind of takes you out of the everyday. Maybe it's walking in the woods, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's reading, maybe it's the arts, whatever it is for you, I think that is your spiritual practice, your spiritual tradition. So being able to articulate that to others and share that, I think it's a really powerful way of honoring our diversity.
Well, that's incredible. It's two things that you said that I found really helpful. One was that, yes, we should tell our stories. That's how we get to know each other better. That's how we get to relate more across difference. But also really recognizing individuals. We have opportunities to do that more, recognizing them for their efforts, and then just appreciating them for who they are, right? So I really appreciate that. Another question, we've all navigated an unprecedented 2.5 years, and generationally, we may have experienced that time differently. What aspects of the heart, mind, and soul, as they've been identified in our theme today, do you lean into? And what is something that your generation can learn from another? You want to start, Dave?
Yeah, of course. I think right when COVID first hit, it was definitely like a moment where, we didn't know what was going to happen next. And I think one of the big takeaways that I got was we just sort of appreciating like where I was in life, or appreciating people around me, because you never know when your life is going to go through that drastic change. So really just allowed me to really become more compassionate to appreciate things, like the little things, right? Like squash the little petty beefs that you have, right? Like, because you never know sort of what's going to happen, whether it be with family, friends, things like that. And then kind of moving on to now, right, in terms of mental health, right? During COVID, there wasn't much to do, right? And now I'm in the stage where there's too much to do, right? I have my attention drawn in a lot of different ways, and so is my time. So we just sort of understanding that I do have to prioritize myself, sort of like what makes me feel good, like what mental health is to me. And I think definitely like these past 2.5 years accelerated the conversation of mental health, which I think is definitely like a good thing. But I think as we return to normalcy, like, I don't want that to falter. I want to make sure that like the conversation continues, that we're continuing to prioritize, what's good for us and what makes us feel good, because, I think like burnout, and I think a lot of students here definitely can feel that, and it's important to make sure that you're making time for yourself.
Thank you. So we have exactly 2 minutes left. Would each of the panelists like to give a 30-second thing that you want to leave with the audience today? You want to start?
I was struggling when you gave me 10 minutes, like, down to 30 seconds. I don't know what I can say in that time. I think the conversation we're having, talking about mental health, talking about diversity, equity, these are contemporary conversations, but they have a much longer history. Thinking about the comment about COVID, I think I took the wrong lesson. What I mean is, I need people to leave me alone. And, COVID hit, and I'm like, you mean to tell me I don't have nobody getting at me? Like, everybody, like, I'm good. A bit of an introvert, and walking out in the, streets of LA is hectic. And I don't mean it can be violent and grimy, but it can also be hectic in the sense of, everybody's always on, and it's like, I don't have to deal with any of that. The Last Dance came on during COVID. It was like, I was out in the street even though I wasn't. Everybody's different, I guess, and the point is my mental health was drastically improved during that period of time. Why? Because racial microaggressions, passive aggressive, situations. I had to deal with any of that.
Right.
It's not coming in my crib. It's outside. And not having to deal with that, when it was time to okay, this is over, you have to kind of go back to the way things were, I was a little apprehensive because I'm like, for all this time, I haven't had to deal with any of that bullshit. I'm being real. It's not in my house. It's not coming in my space. Like, everything's chill in here. I'm listening to Miles Davis and watching, So I guess what I'm saying is that was a situation for me. Like, many people got sick, many people died. Very dark time. But I was trying to find a way, I say this a lot, how do you find comfort in the discomfort? Because there's nothing I could do, I couldn't change COVID. So it's like, how do I make the best out of this? And I think I did through using that as an opportunity to improve my mental health without all these outside distractions. And when I think about that, I think about the fact that we talk openly about mental health now in ways that we have not always talked openly about it as a society.
Yeah.
I went way over 30 seconds. That's what I do.
I was recently thinking about how I've probably seen now 1,500 patients in the hospital, and I can maybe think of one I didn't really like. The other 1,499, I just like them. And that's so weird for me because, I'm also kind of introvert, and when I'm taking the train in the morning, I hate everyone on the train. I hate them. They're talking loud, they're not wearing masks, they're in my space, and I'm frustrated, and I'm judging people. But then 1,499 patients I like. How is that possible? And I realized, because I know they're suffering. Right? I know they're suffering, and it is very hard to judge someone when you know they're suffering. And I think that's so much of what we've been talking about today is just you don't really necessarily know another human being suffering. And I think just having that humility and having that kindness of just knowing that anyone you encounter is struggling with something hard and just softening your heart a little bit toward them. I think that's been a good spiritual lesson.
So I love just hearing all of these wonderful voices and what's been said, because I feel like when thinking about just even today's conversation about mind, heart, and spirit, for me, I think that's one thing that I would invite folks to think about more is the wholeness, right? What does it mean for you to show up whole? Maybe that is taking some space from people. Maybe that isn't always being around folks. Maybe that's having certain boundaries. Maybe that is being around folks. Maybe that's being around the arts. Whatever it is that you need, I want folks to, with urgency, to be able to claim it, right? Because so often we don't claim the things that we need. We do for others without doing for self. And it's okay to be whole in the way that's whole for you. So that's what I would like to leave you with today.
Thank you. Diego.
Yeah, I guess to close things off, I would say just like create your own opportunity. I think like definitely go for it. I was fortunate enough to like right amongst COVID, founded my student organization, which focused on right like inclusion and building that community, and it's something that I was passionate about. So definitely, I think like whatever you pursue, make sure you're passionate about it, because that just like it's mentioned today. It's just really just a lot more fulfilling that way. You feel more whole because you're pursuing something. You're in my case like creating like change, and it's something that I actually care about. So I think overall like top to bottom, I feel like very fulfilled in that sort of like space. So definitely just create your opportunity, but make sure the opportunity is something that you feel passionate about. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, let's give one more round of applause to our guests today. And I thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Hi again. I'm going to close this out. This has been a wonderful morning. Just one more time, please join me in thanking our outstanding guests, Dr. Todd Boyd, Sarah Hurwitz, and Dr. Dina Scott. Diego joining our panel, as well as our performers this morning. Before we leave out, I just wanted to publicly thank all of the wonderful people who make this event possible. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes to make things that look seamless come to fruition. The Diversity Working Group, the Student Advisory Planning Group, the DEI Implementation Leads. I'd also like to thank the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategic Planning Team, Marketing and Communications Team, as well as the Office of Public Affairs, Michigan Creative, and University Development and Events. If you are here in person, I applaud you. And last but in no way least, I would like to thank our Deputy Chief Diversity Officer, Dr. Katrina Wade Golden, who has been a driving force behind each of our summits and everything that you've seen here today, and the DEI implementation process at the university. Again, thank you for those who are here. Thank you for those who are joining us virtually. And this also will be available for viewing asynchronously following the event too, so that those of you who want to reference and tell the people who didn't hear it that they have to listen to these remarks, please pass that on. Thank you, have a wonderful morning, and let's go.